Hello, everybody. My name is Helen Batterley. I'm a UK-based education consultant specialising in early childhood physical activity and movement play. And I'm going to be talking to you for the next half an hour about the importance of fine motor skills, looking at developing those within the physical development area of learning. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. Lovely. Well, welcome to this session and thank you, Early Childhood Development Forum, for inviting me along to speak today. So the first 5 years of our lives, that's when we learn the most physical skills in those first 5 years of our life. And if we think back to that time, if we're able to, for me it's quite a long time ago, that time was a time when I enjoyed playing in the sea, learning to climb trees, learning to cycle, learning to scoot, obviously as an infant, from crawling up to standing, to walking, to running, to jumping. And those physical skills, those milestones are imperative, and actually they are the foundation movements that then lead on to future development. So it's important that young children have lots of time to practice and develop those skills. A moving child is a learning child. Yet we see, not just here in the UK, but globally, physical development is often ignored. Physical development tends to be taken for granted. And actually, within physical development here in the UK, we have our fine motor skills and our gross motor movement. And actually, there's a lot more focus on the fine motor than there is on the gross motor, because that's something that is then tested and used as an assessment later on. Not moving and sitting still is overpraised. The focus is too often on the brain rather than the body because of academic priorities. And physical activity is seen as a chore. Now that was back in 2016, but actually the latest data that's coming out is still showing very similar results. So what is wrong? Why don't people want to move more? Well, we're talking about fine motor skills, but actually without having those gross motor milestones in place, then actually we're going to be hindering fine motor development. Because children's muscle control and coordination is developed in a natural, orderly way, from the top down and from the inside out, which is called the snowflake effect, if you think of how a snowflake grows and develops. So it starts at the head and works down towards the toes while building out from the torso to the limbs. So anything that where we think about the core strength movement, upper body movement, anything that's going to really support those sort of trunk muscles are going to then impact on fine motor. So things like climbing, hanging, swinging, and any other sort of high energy activities that build strength in the upper body and core muscles are vital precursors to fine motor skills. So before we start getting those pencil grips, before we think about tripod grips, before we think about writing, we need to make sure that children are strong in their core and strong in their upper body. The upper body has to carry what's called the shoulder girdle, which is the trapezius and the deltoid muscles all around the shoulder. Now, without that, the weight of the arm is incredibly heavy. So that we need to have that strength in place. Otherwise, we're going to be struggling with getting that grip. There's 60 combined muscles in the hand. So they get their strength from the muscles in the upper arm, and that transcends all the way from the core and the upper body. I hope that makes sense to you all. So these kind of movements are great. Now we know that not everybody can afford to have a fantastic climbing wall in their gym space, but perhaps you've got other ways that you can encourage climbing. Perhaps you've got some great trees, or perhaps you can invest in different mechanisms where children can hang ropes and poles and various things where they can learn to climb independently. So I want you now to think about your provision in your setting. So if you're working with children aged 2 to 6, I want you to think about what kind of provision have you got that allows these kind of movements. twisting, turning, dangling, and swinging. Because these all will help develop flexibility and agility necessary within that shoulder girdle, also within the elbows and the wrists, because the wrist needs to be able to rotate and the fingers need to be strong enough to hold that pencil. What about pushing, pulling, tugging, and lifting, being able to lift themselves up? What apparatus, what stimuli, what provision have you got that allows for these kind of movements? Because these are what are going to develop an intuitive understanding of simple physics such as weight, pressure, and resistance. Again, really vital as a precursor for fine motor skills. So I want you to make a list of these and think about, go back into your setting, if you're not already there, when you go back in tomorrow, and have a look at your space. When you look in your setting, does it identify as a sedentary space? Is it somewhere where there's going to be seated learning? Or is it a movement space? Is it a space where you can combine some seated learning with some movement, perhaps having activities that are standing at desks, perhaps having lots of apparatus that will allow these kind of movements to be available to children? And they've got some lovely pictures of different levels of laterality. So because I've only got half an hour, I can't talk too much about levels of laterality, but if you want to know more about that, I have other online on-demand courses if you want to know more about laterality and the impact that has on hand dominance. So, societal changes have impacted on children's fine motor skills and muscle development. What do we think we mean by societal changes? What is that? Any ideas, any guesses? We're doing it right now. Digital technology. Digital technology has really impacted on children's fine motor skills and their muscle development. We know children are more sedentary now than what they were 15, 20, 25 years ago. And we know that changes in urban environments, changes in lots of traffic as opposed to walking to and from school, all of these are going to be impacting on children's physical development and subsequently their fine motor skills. Now, I remember when I first found out this data as a reception teacher, this coupled with the bones in a child's hand not being fully fused and developed until, for girls, oh, that's my Amazon delivery person, but they're just going to have to keep knocking, at 4 years for girls, so that their hands are pretty much developed for girls at about 4. For boys, it can be as late as 5.5. So a 1.5 years difference, so 18 months of difference in the muscles ready and fused to be able to hold that. So we need to be conscious of this because there are genetic differences between boys and girls when it comes to development. And we do need to be conscious of this. We need to be mindful when engaging children in these activities where fundamental movement skills is essential, like writing, chalking, craft, painting, and threading. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we don't expose children to it, but we need to make sure we have that gross motor movement in place to be able to support the fine motor movement. Now, I just want to give you more details on the snowflake effect. So this is how the muscles transcend. This is how our body works. So the upper body must be in a strong enough position to hold the body in an upright standing or sitting position. So that's the first thing that needs to be in place before we think about writing. When your child is seated, are they seated with their shoulders curved over? That means they haven't got a strong core because they can't sit up straight. Because the shoulder and the head is very heavy. So if the core's not strong, they're going to be slouched over, so they're not using the correct muscles. So first of all, is the upper body strong enough? The shoulder muscles must also be strong enough to control the weight of the arm, which is what I spoke about, that shoulder girdle. And it's got to be flexible enough to rotate freely to position the arm for writing. The upper arm then has to hold the weight of the lower arm and the hand that then delivers the hand to the page. The lower arm provides a sturdy fulcrum on which the wrist rotates, The wrist holds the hand steady and rotates to the appropriate position. The fingers then fold around the pencil, which is held in place by the thumb. Then finally, together, all 5 fingers do this precision dance on the page, placing the pencil at the exact angle to meet the page, pressing down and maintaining the right amount of pressure, so not pushing it too hard because you'll snap the pencil or the pen, and then coordinating those very small, tiny up, down, left and right movements across the page. So without 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is going to be tricky. So we need to be conscious of this. So I just want to demonstrate to you using this simple activity. So I want you to go off and find yourself a piece of paper. It can either be a piece ripped out of a magazine or a newspaper or just a piece of A4 paper or a paper bag. I'm going to use a paper bag. So off you go and find yourself a piece of paper very quickly. Or if you haven't got time to get one now, then you can do it afterwards. But what I want you to do is to stand up and to place the paper in your hand and push it down. Now I want you to lift your hands up. You can see me with the backdrop, my hand disappears. And I want you to start to scrunch it up. Okay, scrunch it up until it disappears. See it. Make sure it disappears. Now I want you to open it. Can you open it using just your fingers? No shaking, no using the other hand. Now really focus on your core and your upper body here. Really feel those muscles transcending all the way down, using that wrist, using those 60 combined muscles in the hand. Lovely, keep going, keep going. Make sure every section is flattened out until you are finished. Let me have a look. Have you done it? Let me see. Perfect. So what did you notice during that time? Did you feel those muscles? Did you feel all of those muscles in your hand? Where did you feel it? Now, if you were to do that again with the other hand sitting down, I want you to tell me what happens when you do it sitting down. This is why we need to encourage mark making. Initially, until we've got those muscles already standing up, thinking at standing up desks, having wallpaper on the walls, thinking about developmentally appropriate provision. Now, when I was a teacher, I had lots of writing provocations for my children. I would always have message centres. I would use post-it messages or little post boxes and say to them, write me a message. Or sometimes we had pegs and I would say, leave me a message around the room, around the classroom. And then I'd say, oh, who's left this message? And then it might be a drawing or it might be some words that they're trying to structure together. Having clipboards at every area, so perhaps the outdoor area by the sand or by water play or by the tough trays, having those clipboards where they can perhaps mark make, or if you've got a home corner, perhaps they want to write a menu and pretend it's a restaurant. Having wallpaper on the walls, if you've got some old reels of wallpaper, getting children, it might be patterned and they can trace over the patterns, it doesn't need to be blank. Putting paper under desks to get children to lay down and to mark make on the floor. Having writing baskets. I used to love going out and finding lots of different things to write with, perhaps attaching cards to the end of pencils, finding lovely colouring pencils that were shaped like a lizard, lovely ones with glitter on, lots of different utensils for writing that will really capture the children's imaginations and really delight them encourage them into writing. And then post-it messages, so lots of post-it notes. Get children to write messages. Perhaps they can make a trail and you have to try and find the treasure and they're leaving you post-it notes. All of these ways are great, fun, engaging way to get children involved in writing without sitting at the desk and thinking about handwriting tasks. We want to move on to that eventually when children are developmentally ready. But first of all, we need to create that joy of writing, that creativity. Now, this is one of the activities I used to do to help strengthen the muscles. So we would use some recycled bubble wrap. First of all, we would jump along it, we would crawl along it, we would roll along it, we would find as many ways as we could to pop it. And then we moved on to our fingers, and we would always sing, Tommy Thumb, where are you? Here I am, how do you do? And pop with our thumbs and then move along the hands. Now, these are some of the ideas that I've used previously to help support fine motor development. Think about those words that we looked at the beginning. Climbing, pulling, tugging, pushing, gardening, bikes, trikes, parachute play. Block play and loose parts, anything where children are moving and lifting things around. The paper under desks again. Cars in paint. This was a good one for the boys that I had, especially the younger boys in my class. I would get the cars and then dip them in paint, and then we would make tracks. Really good for getting that wrist rotation. Look how my wrist is moving. Wet socks and foam balls. This is an interesting one. We used to get some old socks, some adult socks, put one of the squidgy foam balls in, dip it in water, peg it on a washing line and get the children to squeeze out all the water, squeezing them, making lovely splashes and swinging them to make patterns. You can even mix some paint, dilute some paint in there, and they can make some lovely spin patterns with those, but really good, especially doing that standing up. Pegging on washing line, we used to have lots of washing baskets and get children to wash some dolls' clothes and then pegging them on the washing line. That's another great activity. Walking like animals, bear walks, duck walks, spider walks, lots of ways to move, slithering like snakes. Paper crushing, which we've just done. Scarf and ribbon dancing, finger lights, and then popping the bubbles on the bubble wrap. This was the finger lights activity that I did with a group of children in China. Sorry, I'm just checking the time because I don't want to go over, because I can talk forever. So I'm just making sure that we don't go over by time. So there's some of the activities that I wanted to share with you. Now I want to do another activity with you. This one is a hand dance, and we're going to use some music just to really focus on developing the fine motor control. So I want you to do this standing up. So I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to find my music, and then hopefully you can see me. Are you ready? Here we go. Lovely. Let's put our hands together. And let's open. Open. Close. Open. Close. Then just our thumbs. Squeeze and open, really squeeze. Think about your core muscles and your shoulder muscles at the same time. Now, exhale. Lovely, really going to warm up those muscles in our hands. Keep going. Now we're going to rub them and get some friction. Really feel that warmth as we rub them together. Keep going, push them together. Build up some resistance. Lovely, rub them together, then slow. Very slow. Now we're going to roll them. Can you go faster? Other way. Really good for that shoulder muscle. Developing the shoulder girdle, other way. And the other way. And stretch. Lovely. Really feel that stretch. And then up high. Reach them as tall as you can. Bring them down. And again. Bring them down. And again. Bring them down. Thumbs together. Precision movement. Lovely. Then clasp your hands together. Clasp them the other way. Fabulous. How do your hands feel now? Give them a little shake. Give them a little shake to loosen them out. So that's a lovely warm-up activity. But as well as that, we need to be doing our gross motor movements. So making sure we've had children running around, climbing, doing lots of activity, getting them really engaged. Okay, back to my screen share. Lovely. Now, this is how I end all of my presentations. Because for me, this is the key, and actually research across the globe identifies that this is one of the most important, influential things for young children. And that's us. We are such vital people in these children's worlds that we're teaching. And actually, the likelihood is if we're working with younger children that they spend more waking hours with us than they do with their parents and those in their family. So we become a person of such great importance and influence. And we know that young children imitate our behaviours. We see it all the time. So I want you to really challenge yourself today and think, am I worthy of being imitated? This is now on my fridge. This is something that I challenge myself daily. Because for me, it's really important, both as an educator, as a consultant, as a lecturer, as a teacher. I need to make sure that those people I'm working with, that I'm worthy of being imitated. So that's something that's really powerful. So are you somebody that promotes physical activity? Or are you somebody that sighs when it's time to go outside, or sighs when it's time to stand up, or groans when you're moving? Because we need to be really positive about physical activity and about gross motor to then lead on to that fine motor skills. We don't want to be pushing children too early into that fine motor skills and activities until they're developmentally ready. So have a look at their bodies. Are they ready? Are they enjoying that? Or are you actually going to push them away from it because they're not happy, they're not engaged, and it's not fun? Go back to the message tasks that I spoke about. Think about those writing provocations that we can have to influence children to engage in movement and fine motor skills. So we're coming to the end of my presentation today. You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook, and there's my website and my email. If you go onto my website, onto the homepage and scroll all the way down, there's a free music download resource. Now that will be directly emailed to you, and it contains lots of music suggestions and then physical activities to do alongside that music. I've also got lots of free courses online, lots of courses that are very reasonable, that are available internationally. I also have a couple of publications that I'd just like to show you, 50 fantastic ideas for songs and rhymes, if you can see it because of there we go. and this one is Music and Movement in the Early Years. These are both available on my website, and the Songs and Rhymes one looks at ways that we can engage children using a song as a rhyme as a starting point and then leading on to extend into other areas of learning, specifically around physical activity and physical development. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time. I'm going to stop the share now. And I don't know if I have any questions in the chat room, or if there are going to be any questions, I'm not sure. But otherwise, I will join you on Facebook and listen to any questions that you have there and help you wherever I can. Please do get in touch. Please do connect with me on social media. And if you'd like to know more, then get in touch. And thank you very much for your time today.